If you've ever watched someone fight for something bigger than themselves, you know there's a moment, just one moment, where the whole world seems to hold its breath. This is that story. And if it moves you the way it moved everyone in that studio, do us a favor right now. Hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one. Because what happened on that Family Feud stage on a Thursday afternoon in October 2023 didn't just break a record. Broke open every single heart in that room, including Steve Harvey's. Marcus Webb was not the kind of man who asked for help. He was 38 years old, broad-shouldered, quietly spoken, and the kind of father who showed up. Not just for the big moments, the birthdays, and the school plays, but for the ordinary ones too. The Tuesday morning breakfasts, the homework sessions that ran past midnight, the bedtime prayers that had gotten longer and more desperate over the last 14 months. Marcus was from Memphis, Tennessee, raised in a household where you handled your problems quietly and thanked God loudly. His mother had taught him that. His father, who worked 2 jobs for 30 years without complaint, had shown him that. And so when life handed Marcus Webb the worst thing a parent can be handed, he handled it quietly too. He told almost nobody. He went to work. He came home. He sat beside his daughter's hospital bed and read her chapters from her favorite book, even on the nights when her eyes were too heavy to stay open. He just kept showing up. His daughter's name was Destiny. She was 9 years old, and she had the kind of laugh that made strangers turn around in grocery stores just to find out where it was coming from. A laugh like a surprise, sudden, full, completely unguarded. She loved butterflies, strawberry ice cream, the color yellow, and a stuffed elephant named Gerald that had been washed so many times his trunk had started coming loose. She had been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia 14 months before the day Marcus stood under the bright lights of the Family Feud stage. The treatment was working, slowly, painfully, expensively, but it was working. The doctors used words like responding well and cautiously optimistic, and Marcus had learned to carry those words with him like stones in his pocket, something solid to hold onto when everything else felt like it was dissolving. The bills did not respond well to anything. With insurance, after copays, after the medications not covered, after the parking fees at the hospital that added up to hundreds of dollars a month, after taking unpaid leave from his job as a warehouse supervisor to be with Destiny during her worst treatment weeks, Marcus was drowning. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just slowly, steadily, the way water rises when you don't notice it until it's at your chin. He had used his savings. He had borrowed from his mother. He had sold the truck and bought a beater for $900 that sometimes started and sometimes didn't. He had stopped eating lunch most days so that Destiny's hospital snack bag was always full. He had never once told Destiny any of this. As far as she knew, everything was fine. Dad was handling it. Dad always handled it. The Family Feud opportunity came through Marcus's coworker, Darnell, who had been trying for 2 years to get his family on the show and kept coming up short in the audition process. Darnell knew Marcus's situation, not because Marcus had told him, but because people who work side by side for 6 years tend to learn each other's weight. One afternoon in the break room, Darnell slid an application form across the table and said 3 words, "Just try it." Marcus stared at the form for a long moment. Then he folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. That night after Destiny fell asleep, he filled it out at the kitchen table under the one lamp that still had a working bulb. The Webb family, Marcus, his sister Cheryl, his mother Miss Gloria, his cousin Darius, and his Aunt Pat made it through the audition process in 6 weeks. When they got the call, Miss Gloria cried. Cheryl started planning her outfit immediately. Marcus sat very still on the couch and thought about Destiny asleep in the next room. The prize for winning fast money was $20,000. He had done the math 14 times. $20,000 would cover 4 months of Destiny's treatment costs, clear his overdue electric bill, and put enough aside to keep the car running through winter. $20,000 was not a solution, but it was air. And right now, Marcus Webb needed air. He told Destiny he was going on a TV show. She made him promise to say hi to Steve Harvey for her. She said very seriously that Steve Harvey was funny and that she thought he and Gerald the elephant would probably get along. Marcus had laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. He wrote, "Say hi from Destiny," on a post-it note and stuck it inside his jacket pocket, right next to his heart. The morning of the taping, Marcus woke up at 4:30. He sat on the edge of his bed in the dark and did what he always did when things felt too large. He talked to Destiny in his head. Not out loud. He wasn't that far gone, but in that private conversation that runs underneath everything when you love someone more than you love your own life. He told her he was going to do his best. He told her this was for her. He told her about the strawberry ice cream he was going to buy her when he got home, and how Gerald was going to get a brand new trunk sewn back on, and how they were going to sit on the back porch and watch the sun go down like they used to before all of this. Then he got up, ironed his shirt, and drove his unreliable car to the airport. The Webb family was electric in the studio. Miss Gloria, 71 years old, had worn her church hat, the big ivory one with the silk flower on the side that she reserved for occasions she considered God-level important. Cheryl had indeed executed a spectacular outfit. Darius kept making everyone laugh in the green room. Aunt Pat had brought a bag of homemade pralines that she offered to absolutely everyone, including production staff she had never met. The Webb family did not do nervous. They did loud, warm, and fully present. Marcus stood among them and felt for a moment something close to ordinary, something close to okay. They won the main game. It wasn't close. Miss Gloria in particular became an instant studio favorite, answering a question about what people do at a party with such conviction that the audience applauded for 30 seconds straight. By the time fast money came around, the Webbs had momentum and the room had fully adopted them. Cheryl went first. She was quick, funny, sharp. She scored 134 points. The number hung on the board like a challenge. To win the $20,000, the family needed 200 points total. Marcus needed 66. 66 points from 5 questions, completely doable, happens all the time. Marcus stepped up to the podium, rolled his shoulders back, and looked at Steve Harvey. Steve looked back. And something shifted in him, the way it sometimes does, the way it had happened a handful of times in a decade of hosting, when the person standing across from him was carrying something the audience couldn't see yet. Steve had learned to recognize that particular stillness, the kind that isn't calm, the kind that is controlled. "Marcus," Steve said in that warm, careful way he had, "you look like a man with a plan." "I've got a reason," Marcus said quietly. Steve tilted his head. "We'll come back to that. Let's get you that money first." The clock started. "Name something people put on a burger." "Cheese." Number one answer, 41 points. The audience cheered. "Name a reason someone might cancel a date." "Sick." Number two answer, 22 points, not number one, but solid. Running total for Marcus, 63 points, 3 points short, 3 questions left. "Name a sport kids play in the backyard." "Basketball." Number one, 38 points. The crowd surged. Marcus was well past 66 now. He kept going, jaw set, eyes focused. "Name something that might wake you up in the middle of the night." "A noise." Number three answer, 16 points. "Fine." "Name something people do to cheer themselves up." "Call a friend." It flashed on the board. Number two answer, 19 points. The buzzer sounded. The studio held its breath while the scores were tallied. Cheryl's 134. Marcus's total, 65 points. 1 point short. One single point away from 200. The board showed 199. Steve Harvey went very still. In the audience, people who had been laughing 30 seconds ago were suddenly silent in that particular way that happens when something real intrudes on the bright manufactured energy of a game show. Cheryl covered her mouth. Miss Gloria gripped Aunt Pat's arm. Darius stared at the board. Marcus stood at the podium and looked at the number, 199. And then something happened to his face that no one in that room would forget. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was the exact opposite. It was a man quietly absorbing a blow he had been steeling himself against for 14 months and finding out that he was not, in fact, as steel as he had thought. His chin dropped. His eyes closed. His shoulders, which had been straight and squared since he walked onto that stage, curved inward just slightly, just enough, like something inside had let go. Steve Harvey walked toward him slowly, not with the quick, purposeful stride of a host moving things along, slowly, the way you walk toward someone you're not sure how to reach. "Marcus." His voice was very quiet. The microphone caught it anyway. "Talk to me." Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at Steve, and then, in the way that sometimes happens when someone simply asks the right question at the right moment, he told the truth. "I needed that money for my daughter," he said. His voice was even, controlled. The voice of a man who had been holding things together for a very long time. "She's 9. She has leukemia. The treatment's working, but it costs more than—" He stopped, swallowed, started again. "I just needed to get to 200. Nobody moved. I've been doing everything I can think of. I sold my truck. I stopped eating lunch so her hospital bag is always stocked. My mom lent me money she doesn't have. I thought if I could just get this one thing right." His voice broke. Clean and sudden like a branch in a storm. "I just needed this one thing to go right." And Marcus Webb, 38 years old, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who shows up and handles things and never asks for help, folded at the knees and sat down right there on the stage floor. Not dramatically. He didn't fall. He just sat down the way a person sits down when they have run entirely out of standing. His hands were on his knees. His head was bowed. He was not making a sound. He was just done, completely, utterly, humanly done. Steve Harvey crouched down beside him. He didn't say anything at first. He just crouched down and put a hand on Marcus's shoulder and stayed there. The audience was completely silent. A few people were crying. The cameras kept rolling because what else could they do? This was the most real thing that had happened in that studio in years, and everyone in the room knew it. Then Steve spoke, not into the camera, to Marcus. Quietly, almost privately, except the microphone was still there. "You got 199 points, Steve said. You know what that tells me? That tells me you showed up everything you had for that little girl, every single point you could find, and one number on a board doesn't change a single thing about who you are or what you've done for her." Marcus didn't respond. His head stayed down. Steve continued. "Can I ask you something? What's her name?" A pause, then, "Destiny." Steve Harvey nodded slowly, like the name meant something. "Destiny," he repeated. "You named her right." Another pause. "How old is she?" 9. 9 years old, fighting leukemia." Steve's voice was steady, but there was something behind it, something effortful about its steadiness. "And her daddy drove himself to the ground trying to make sure she never has to worry. You know what that is? That's not a man who failed. That's the definition of a father." Marcus finally looked up. His eyes were red. He was not a man given to public emotion, and you could see the cost of it on his face. The rawness of having been seen when you've worked so hard not to be. "She made me promise to say hi to you," Marcus said. She said she thought you and her stuffed elephant would probably get along." He almost laughed. It came out broken and real, and the audience, which had been holding its breath for 2 full minutes, released a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Steve Harvey blinked. He blinked again, and then he stood up because he needed a moment, and he walked 2 steps away and pressed his hand to his face, and the audience gave him that moment completely and without sound. When he turned back, his eyes were wet, and he wasn't pretending otherwise. "What's the elephant's name?" Steve asked. "Gerald." "Gerald," Steve nodded with great seriousness. "Gerald sounds like good people." He reached down and helped Marcus to his feet. Marcus stood, still unsteady, still raw, but standing. "You came here for $20,000, Steve said, loud enough now for the room, for the cameras, for everyone watching at home. "You came 1 point short, and I want to tell you something, Marcus. 1 point short of perfect, with everything you're carrying, is the most impressive thing I've seen on this stage." He paused. He looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he turned to the production team and said 4 words that the audience responded to with the loudest sound of the day. "Get me the producer." What happened next had never happened before in the show's history. Steve Harvey, speaking directly to camera, told the audience what he was going to do. He was calling in every favor he had. He was putting his own money in. He was calling his people. He said it plain and he said it fast, because Steve Harvey was not a man who liked to perform generosity. He just liked to do it. The show's production company, moved by what they had witnessed, agreed on the spot to match the $20,000 prize. Donations began arriving on the show's social accounts before the taping had even finished. Within 48 hours, a verified fundraising page set up by the Webb family's church had raised over $300,000, but that came later. In the moment, what Steve Harvey did, the thing that the clip would be watched and rewatched by 60 million people, was simpler than any of that. He crouched down beside a man on a stage floor and asked him his daughter's name. He stayed there until the man could stand back up. He witnessed it. And in the witnessing, he made sure that Marcus Webb understood with absolute certainty that he was not alone on this floor. That matters. It matters in a way that no dollar amount can fully measure, though the dollars mattered enormously and no one should pretend otherwise. Because Marcus Webb had been alone on this floor, metaphorically, for 14 months. He had carried this the way he was raised to carry things, quietly, internally, without complaint. And what Steve Harvey gave him in those few minutes on a game show stage was permission to put it down. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember that carrying alone is a choice, not a requirement. The episode aired 3 weeks later. The clip of Marcus sitting on the floor and Steve crouching beside him went viral within hours. Not because it was dramatic. There are more dramatic things on the internet every single day. But because it was true. Because you could see, in Marcus's face, 14 months of love and exhaustion and silent desperation. And you could see, in Steve's response, what it looks like when a person with a platform uses it for exactly the right thing. The morning after the episode aired, Marcus was sitting with Destiny at the hospital for her regular treatment session. She had watched the clip on his phone 17 times. She was particularly interested in the moment Steve Harvey said Gerald sounded like good people. "I knew he'd like Gerald," she told her father with great satisfaction. "I knew it," Marcus laughed, full and real, the kind of laugh he hadn't had in a long time. Destiny looked up at him with those clear, direct eyes that 9-year-olds have, the ones that haven't learned yet to look away from hard things, and she said, "You did good, Dad." He cried then. In the hospital room, in the plastic chair beside her treatment chair, with the machines humming and the afternoon light coming in sideways through the blinds. He cried and she patted his hand with her small one and said, "It's okay," in the tone of someone who has been through enough to actually mean it. Destiny had 2 more treatment cycles after that. Both went well. By the following spring, her doctors used the word remission for the first time. Marcus heard it and had to sit down, not on a stage floor this time, but in a hospital corridor chair with his face in his hands and his whole body shaking with something that was not grief. Miss Gloria, who had come with him to that appointment, sat beside him and held the back of his neck with one hand the way she had when he was small and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. The fundraising paid for all remaining treatment. It cleared Marcus's debts. It meant he didn't have to sell anything else, didn't have to skip any more meals, didn't have to lie awake doing impossible math. The church that had hosted the fundraising page organized a community celebration when Destiny went into remission, a backyard cookout that stretched across 3 lawns and lasted until midnight. Someone brought a yellow balloon arch because yellow was Destiny's color. Gerald the elephant attended, newly repaired, his trunk fully reattached by a neighbor who turned out to do textile work. Steve Harvey flew to Memphis 6 months after the episode aired. He didn't announce it ahead of time. He just showed up at the cookout at a backyard in Memphis, in a neighborhood that doesn't often get visited by television hosts, and ate Miss Gloria's cooking and held Destiny's hand while she showed him her butterfly collection and formally introduced him to Gerald. He stayed for 4 hours. When he left, Destiny told him to come back. He said he would try. She looked at him with those 9-year-old eyes and said, "You should, Gerald likes you." Steve Harvey, the man who had interviewed presidents and billionaires and the most famous entertainers on Earth, appeared to find this the most satisfying review he had ever received. In the year that followed, Marcus was invited to speak at 3 fundraising events for pediatric cancer research. He was not a natural public speaker. He said so himself up front at all 3 events. But he had something better than polish. He had the truth. He stood at those podiums in his iron shirt and talked about what it actually feels like to be a single parent watching your child fight for her life. He talked about the specific loneliness of it, the way love and helplessness mix into something that has no name, the way you learn to live inside a single day because any larger unit of time is too frightening to hold. And he talked about the moment on a stage floor when a man he'd never met crouched down beside him and asked his daughter's name, and how that, not the money, not the cameras, not the viral moment, was the thing he kept coming back to. The thing that changed something. "I had convinced myself," Marcus said at the last of those events, "that asking for help was the same as failing, that handling it alone was what love looked like. But love isn't silence. Love isn't white-knuckling it by yourself until you break. Love is letting people in. Love is letting people crouch down next to you when you've run out of standing." He paused. "My daughter is in remission, and I don't think that's because of one game show or one moment. I think it's because of every single person who saw that moment and decided to do something. That's what actually works, people deciding to do something." The audiences at those events gave him standing ovations. He looked mildly uncomfortable during all of them, which made the applause go longer every time. Destiny Webb is 11 now. She goes to school. She has a best friend named Kira who shares her obsession with butterflies. She is in the school choir and has, by all accounts, inherited her grandfather's work ethic and her father's quiet determination. She still has Gerald, though Gerald is now held together in 3 places by careful needlework courtesy of 3 different neighbors who have each taken a turn. She keeps a photo on her dresser, not of the viral moment, not of the stage or the score or any of the things the internet remembers. It's a photo someone took at the backyard cookout in Memphis. Marcus and Steve Harvey sitting in lawn chairs with paper plates of food, both of them laughing at something Destiny is saying. Destiny is off to the side, mid-sentence, hands moving, completely in charge of the moment. The yellow balloon arch is in the background. Gerald is on the armrest of Marcus's chair. It's a photo about what happens after the hard thing, after the camera stops, after the number on the board stops mattering. It's a photo of people who came through something together and are now simply at a cookout, eating good food, laughing at a 9-year-old's jokes, letting the afternoon be ordinary. Marcus still works at the warehouse. He still shows up. He does eat lunch now. He made Destiny a promise, and she tracks it with unsettling accuracy. He has started slowly to talk more openly about what their family went through, because he has come to believe that the silence he once mistook for strength was actually just loneliness in a different outfit. He talks about it for the dads who are sitting in hospital corridors right now, alone with impossible math and too much pride to ask for help. He talks about it for them. And this is the part of the story that doesn't end, not with a number on a board, not with a viral clip, not with a remission announcement in a hospital hallway. It ends here with you watching this. Because if Marcus's story moved you, and if you've made it this far, it moved you, then the question worth sitting with is the simple one he asked himself the morning after the episode aired, while his daughter watched a clip on his phone for the 17th time. What am I going to do with this? You don't have to raise $300,000. You don't have to be Steve Harvey. You don't have to do anything large or visible or viral. You just have to do something. Call the person in your life who is white-knuckling it alone and ask them their daughter's name. Show up to the cookout. Bring food to the hospital. Tell someone that 1 point short of perfect with everything they're carrying is the most impressive thing you've seen. That's the lesson Marcus Webb sat down on a stage floor and got back up to teach us. That love is not silence. That community is not optional. That when someone runs out of standing, the most powerful thing in the world is simply to crouch down beside them and stay. Destiny knew that already, by the way. She's 9, 11 now, and she's known it her whole life. She just patted her dad's hand in a hospital room and said, "It's okay," like she meant it. She did mean it. If this story stayed with you, please give it a like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories about real people doing extraordinary things in ordinary moments. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today, because somewhere out there, someone is sitting on their own version of that stage floor, and they just need to know that the next part of the story can still be a backyard cookout with yellow balloons and a stuffed elephant named Gerald who, as it turns out, gets along just fine with Steve Harvey.